Hi, this is Dave, Fellow Running Guide. Welcome to another navigation task. This one is a route choice task, and what we've got to do is get from sheepfold A over to the stone circle at B, but with the added difficulty and interest that we've got to do it at night. So no visibility really how we're going to get from A to B. And this is actually a navigation task that I did with some clients a couple of years ago. So I'll tell you at the end how they did it. So what are our options? Well, the shortest way is obviously a straight line. So if we were to head maybe just south of east up onto this high point here, continue across Big Moor, aiming for the area between these two streams to pop out here, cross the stream, hit the track and turn right and come along. And what we're looking for, we see this track here, it's got an obvious bend in it there, just to the south or southwest of our destination. So that would be our attack point, this kink in the bend, regardless of which way we went into it. So option 1 would look something like that, up, straight across, and it doesn't matter if we got this bearing slightly wrong, we've got a margin for error between that stream there and that stream there. As long as we were slightly south of east, that should be okay. I mean, even if we hit the head of this stream here, we'd know where we were, be able to head in and then down to our attack point, as we said. So what are the statistics for that? So I'm using Anquet mapping software here, so you can see that route 1, just over 2.5 kilometers with an ascent of 51 meters. That's my estimated time. I think I've set it for 6 minutes per kilometer, so 17 minutes for that. So that option 1 is taking quite a long leg over sort of rough ground without any features. Some people wanted to use more tick-off features as they went along, so that would mean heading more southeasterly and hitting this field, this complex field system here, and navigating along the top of it to the corner there, and then using that as a point that we can then head off across. Now some people said they'd head due east, aiming for this woodland here, and then up the edge of it and hit the track. Now I'd be wary of that because these little symbols here are marsh, so you've got marshy ground there and marshy ground there, so there's a potential if you took that line of approach, you'd have a good maybe 300 or even 400 meters of marshy ground, which would be best avoided if you could. So what about getting to that point there and taking a bearing a little bit more northerly? So it would be something like that, heading down to hit the field system. And again, it doesn't matter if we weren't on a particularly accurate bearing here. If we're heading southeastwards, we're going to hit these fields, and we'll just turn left up the hill and along the top edge. No need for sort of pacing it really. I'd say we're going to find it and then find that corner, and then a bearing maybe closer to 70 degrees in, across the stream and up. Now one thing about steepness of ground, people were saying they didn't want to get too much in this. These are 5 meter contour intervals, so even here in this steep ground it's not particularly dangerous. Likewise going up this steep ground here, 5 meter intervals, it's not too tricky. So that was an option, heading across that way. Here, this last little leg, if you got it slightly wrong, if we hit the track and the track's running close to north-south, we're here. If the track's running with more an easterly-westerly component, then we're here. So that would help determining where we were if we didn't come out straight on the bend. So what are the statistics for that route? So we can see here 2.8 kilometers, 56 meters of climb and 18 minutes. So there's not a lot of difference in it distance wise or ascent or even time wise. Now one thing to note is the terrain, and we don't know just by looking at the map whether it's runnable terrain or rough, horrible terrain. And the disadvantage of doing this at night is that you can't look ahead. So it might be that in the daytime we could take option 1, head up here, maybe get a vantage point towards the trig point and look eastwards across Big Moor and see what the terrain had in store for us. If it wasn't too bad, then we could go for that. If it looked like it was going to be thigh deep heather or deep bracken, then we might choose a different option. At night you've not got that advantage. You might start off on your route and then decide to change your mind. Now what we can see here is along this break of slope line here we've got a path, and that path leads all the way down to Swine Sty. So if you were opting for option 1 here and then got to this point and thought, you know what, this is going to be horrible going, let's try and minimize the distance, you could then turn right and hopefully run along better terrain along this path to here. Let's just check some distances. So distance from the end of that path over to there is 750 meters. Distance from here, oh sorry, let me do that again. Distance from this point there over to there is actually 1,280 meters, so quite a bit more distance over potentially rough ground. So there's not a great deal in those. The way that my clients did it is they opted for option 2. They were on a slightly older map that didn't show this path here, so their idea was to set off from this point here. So they were planning on setting off from here on a bearing, and what they wanted to do, you see just in here there's a little black line, so a wall or a fence line. They were aiming for that, and then hopefully just going straight up the other side, turning right into the attack point to there. So that was the plan. What actually happened was that they headed across here and they actually drifted down the slope rather than, they thought they were on a bearing to the boundary. They drifted down the slope and hit the stream probably about there, and then went straight up the fall line on the other side, and just pure coincidence came out straight on that bend on the attack point that they were aiming for, that they wanted to get to anyway. So that was quite fortuitous, and then from there into the stone circle, found it no problem. It's really less than 100 meters. So different ways of doing it, different options. I think at night, having the benefit of the confidence of ticking off things as you go, people tend to like that, whereas striking off across the moor with not really knowing exactly where you are until you hit the stream at the other side requires a little bit more confidence. So different options, nothing wrong, nothing right. On something like this, you've got some really good collecting features. If we're heading east, you're going to hit this stream here, and just beyond it is the track, and we can easily relocate once we get to the track. So that's your answer. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and look out for next week's navigation tests. Bye for now.